अस्सलाम वालेकुम। बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। शफकत काका खेल साहब, ज़ेल सुलेरी साहब, अफरा सयाब खटक, मोहम्मद रफ़ीक साहब, अरशद समद खान, खुर्शीद साहब, जामी साहब, हमारे गुल नजम जामी साहब और सुहेल सेठी। SDPI team present here, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to all of you being here on this very important forum and a seminar on deforestation. First of all, I take this opportunity to thank Shafkat Kaka Khail Saab to have given us this opportunity to Sarhad Conservation Network on a very important and a critical issue that confronts KP, which is deforestation. Especially under the interim government, it has become more and more pronounced, the KP government, ever since the interim government came here in June 2023. We are seeing disturbing reports from both settled and merged districts. And they're pouring it with shocking images, videos, reports, and videos and images on both mainstream media as well as social media. It's a buzz with it. In both the merged and districts, particularly in tribal, we'll show a small video on it. It's very, very serious issue. As you all know, Pakistan जो है ये 5th rank कर रहा है climate risk index पे on the world. So that makes it more serious कि being on such a high risk region and what the for deforestation will mean for the future of this area. This issue demanded attention of the policymakers and a change of mind in the policymakers, the highest level. And although we understand, हमें सबको पता है कि forest is a devolved issue, and the provinces have to deal with it. But at the same time, why we understand that we came here to take this opportunity कि ये a trans-boundary issue भी है. It's a trans-boundary issue that affects globally, regionally, then provincially, and then also nationally. So it is like something that you can't say it's a KP issue and they can deal it. Under those 14th Amendment, we met Sherry Rahman 4 months ago in August, and she decided to come to the seminar. I talked with Shafkat Saab कि हम उनको बुलाएंगे, and she said, you first raise it. It's a very critical issue. Since she was heading the government of Pakistan on the UN climate change, and she took played a very good role. But in the meantime, she left. अभी भी उनके लिए हम वेट करते रहे, SDPI को हम कहते रहे कि चूंकि उनका इतना बैकग्राउंड है, she has got such a strong this thing on it and she is known globally, तो आ जाएंगी. लेकिन somehow it was delayed. Anyway, SCN was compelled to take this to come on this forum so that यहाँ से हम कुछ effective यहाँ से लें to take up the concerned authorities. I don't know how good it will be and how much, लेकिन at least this debate should carry on, and we should reach the higher circles, both at the climate change ministry. We invited them. I don't know if anyone came from there because their issue, and we need to tackle it before it's too late. क्योंकि जो deforestation होगी वहाँ flood तो northern area में आके it will destroy few homes, but what happens in Sindh and what happens in Punjab, it's worse. So all the entire region, a whole country gets flooded, and it's got serious consequences. Having said that, I will request all the key speakers one by one to shed light on it and come with a roadmap. And every day we have some stories which I'll share at the very end, interactive meeting. First of all, we have made a very small video जो कि एक montage है, जो कि एक बहुत glimpse देता है, which is not even 1/4 of what is happening. हमारे पास 100 images थी, videos थी, so we try to just capture it a little bit in this small montage, which shows the very severity of it, or it's like
you. So let's begin with the guest speakers, panelists we have. First of all, I would like to invite Dr. Muhammad Rafiq Saab to speak about given his wide experience as an environmental expert on strategic planning, organization change and development, community forestry and sustainable development, and environmental impact assessment. He has worked in the government of Pakistan. He has been the country head of IUCN, International Union of Conservation of Nature in Pakistan, and also he's worked there in Switzerland, in Rainforest Alliance in USA, ZITS Foundation in Germany and Kenya. And he's been running a lot of consultancy internationally for various organizations, including UN. Given his background, so he can shed a complete, light on the whole situation and show us the way forward. Over to you, Rafiq Saab. Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. Thanks to you, Ambassador, and Dr. Zarif, and distinguished guests, SDPI, everyone. It is really a great privilege to be here. I have had my own association with SDPI because SDPI came about at the same time when I joined IUCN and when the National Conservation Strategy was approved. And in fact, it was one of the implementation mechanisms of the National Conservation Strategy. And I also served on the board for a period of time. So it's coming like home again. Thank you very much. Also in the audience, I'm meeting lots of my friends who I worked with and who I knew for the wonderful people that they are. And it gives me an immense sense of satisfaction and reward to see all of them taking positions of responsibility and leadership in different organizations. My job here is both easy and difficult. Easy it is because I have lived forest, I have bred forest, I have planted, I have cut, I have sold. I've done everything that you can possibly do with the forest. Also, I served in the forest department. I worked in different countries looking at the forest and how they are managed. And the difficult part is that how I reconcile the dilemma of pointing out the realities and facts while staying positive. The thing is that we complain a lot. A lot of our meetings are about this is bad in Pakistan and this is bad in Pakistan, this is not working. Every time, every space that you go to, whether it is a formal occasion or informal occasion, what I would like to do is, this is my hope, that clarify some of the things for the audience, which are not really very clear. There is a confusion around them, and that confusion perpetuates because the people who know, they don't want to talk about it, and people who don't know, they just propagate what they hear. And my hope is that at the end, I can leave some pointer what we can really do. You know, where do we go from here? You have heard already, you know, it is no secret that Pakistan is, even if not as responsible for the climate change, its contribution is minimal, as my friend said, but it is very exposed, very vulnerable. Deforestation plays a part, and deforestation was always there. It's not new. So it started with when the British first colonized the subcontinent. They started with basically cutting the teak forests of the tropical parts of the subcontinent. And they needed this wood for their railways and for their shipping industry. And it was
when they were running out of the supply of teak wood, they discovered that cedar in the Himalayas were as strong and as durable. So they turned to the cutting of trees in these virgin forests of the Himalaya.
And it didn't take them too long to realize that these forests were also disappearing. Disappearing both because they were exploiting them, but at the same time, local population was also depending on them. They thought, how can their interest at that time was not conservation. Their interest was to secure the supply of timber. That is why they brought the legislation where they declared some of the forest as reserved forests. Mostly they were the forests which were the productive forests. They were on high altitude, and those parts of the forest which was near the habitation, they were left for the communities to meet their own needs. So the community rights from the reserve forests were abolished. Instead, as a compensation, Guzara forests were created. And the Guzara forests were heavily burdened with the rights of the people for fuel wood, for timber, for house construction, even for making a living selling some of the wood. And there was another category of forests, what they call protected forests. They were the forests which at that time could not be assigned any category. They were like parking lot where some forests were put. A typical example of them is the Malakand division forest, which still are called protected forest. And I'll come back to that a bit later. They started with what used to be called a contract system. Contract system was where standing trees would be sold to a contractor, and contractor would pay price for a standing tree on a per foot or a cubic feet basis. This was the beginning of the fall, because once the contractor entered the forest, they not only removed what was allowed to them, what they paid for, they would also remove anything else they could put their hands on. And the pace of deforestation increased. They could not do it without the involvement of the forest department. So it was a kind of evil nexus, if you can call it, between the contractors and the Forest Service. One with a vested interest and the other as a custodian. It went so bad that in 60s, late 60s, the system was banned. Forest contract system was abolished. There was a pause. There was a put ban on forest harvesting commercially. And at that time, after a little pause, Forest Development Corporation was created, which basically meant that instead of contractors cutting the trees, they were owning the trees. Trees would be belonging to the owners, but Forest Development Corporation will work like a cutting contractor. They will only have the right to go and cut trees for a certain fee, but the benefit will go to the state or the owners, whosoever they were. That system worked quite well. Initially, in the early 70s, people with high integrity were employed, but it didn't take too long for the contractors to penetrate that space as well. And then they became the contractor of the Forest Development Corporation, and they would start cutting trees which didn't belong to them, which were not meant to be cut. In a parallel move, Guzara owners, and there is another, and I want to clarify this. A lot of people say that Guzara owners wanted to create a system in which they have greater authority on the forest that they own. The Guzara forests are owned by the people, by the communities. So forest cooperatives system was evolved, and it was evolved in the name of the owners, but actually it was again the timber mafia behind it. And they played a havoc with the forest. Unbelievable speed and rate of deforestation came through. And again, the government was very alarmed. And again, all commercial harvesting was suspended. Cooperative system was abolished. And the forests were put for a time in peace.
It was 1992.
And then for 10 years, this ban more or less started. And you could see the forest recovering. You know, the nice thing about the forest is if you leave them at peace, even if you don't plant trees, they come naturally. They just need some peace. But the forest department, again, because of this deeply rooted corrupt system, they cannot wait too long.
They will always try to find a way how to get to the trees. So they introduced again what was called policy of removing dead, fallen, and diseased trees. And it is very benign concept if you look at it. You know, for a policymaker, if I'm an owner and I go to the policymaker and say, look, these trees are dying anyway, they have fallen, they will rot. I cannot be allowed to cut them.
The problem is that these dead, dry trees are needed by the forest itself, because the forest biodiversity depends on these dead trees. They are a part of the ecosystem as well. Then also the local people need them. Local people, you cannot expect a person in Karan buying wood from Avelia and making a house in Karan.
No matter what law you put in place, he will go and cut trees and take the wood and use it. So these trees, if they have to be removed, they are better used foremost for local consumption. And if there is still some supply, excess, of course, they should be commercially marketed. And I'll come to that point later as well. So basically, my first point is deforestation is not new.
It has increased. The people behind it are mostly the timber mafia, as it's called, very deeply aligned with the Forest Service itself. It's being done in the name of forest owners, and ironically, forest owners benefit the least. The benefit doesn't reach them. And I'm saying this because I'm also a forest owner. I own a piece of forest, my family does, in the Siren Valley and in the Nandiyar Valley. Even today, as I speak, last year, some forest was to be harvested, and it is enormously difficult for an ordinary man to access decision-making and get the benefit. You need this timber mafia. So even a person like me was forced to sell my trees to one of the contractors because only he can get the decision. It's the reality. So if we have to look at it, we have looked at it at the system level. So what is the impact of that? One is massive deforestation. And it is borne out by those studies which were done by Global Forest Watch, but also by
the audit department of the KP itself. Their own report says that the forests are being lost at 1.5% annually. There is also another myth that I should take this opportunity to clarify.
That is the concept of sustainable management. When you talk to the forest department, to them, sustainable management is what used to be called sustainable yield. This notion essentially means that you let the forest grow, and the increment that they put over the years, the growth, periodically you go and you remove that increment.
So you can't remove it from each tree, but you remove the equivalent of that in select number of trees. Yes, and then you can, and this was again the concept introduced by the British because they needed sustained supply of timber to meet the demand which they had on the forest. Now, sustainable management is very different than that. Sustainable management is looking at the ecosystem level, whether you can manage the forest as an entity as it is. So you can have sustainable yield, but in the process, you can lose all your forest. Sustainable means each year you remove what the increment of the trees is. And meanwhile, if the forests are being cut, so you only remove what the trees are putting on, and the forest can be going down, down, down. And this is what has been happening as well. Whereas the concept of sustainable management would dictate that the forest as a system perpetuates, and it exists as an entity, and it exists the benefits that it is meant to provide.
Associated with it is, the economic losses also, and for SDPI, because they look into the policy from the people's perspective and the economic perspective as well. If you notice, if you go to Karachi, if you go to Islamabad, wherever you go and check, ask people who are begging. You will take them, a lot of them beg to the mountain areas. Because if the forests, for one, but it's not only forest, it's generally the public policy. If it does not generate income earning opportunities for the people, making a living from the mountains is extremely hard. And they move. And who moves? People who have the initiative, people who can take risks, people who are entrepreneurs, and those who are young. Left behind are people who have limited capacity. So if you go to my village, Batagram, for example, and I've observed it in my own life, irrigated land has become Barani land, and Barani land, which was used to go for wheat crops, etc., it has become barren. Irrigation systems have fallen apart because the people who were supposed to, the youth, the energy people with help, they have moved. Some of them have gone to the Middle East, some have moved to the cities, and some are just forced to go out and just beg. So it is disintegrating the social fabric of the society as well. Then it is, other benefits of ecosystem, loss of biodiversity, disruption of water cycle, soil erosion, human health. But also it poses threats to food security. And how does it do that? In two ways. When forests are cut, you disrupt the water cycle. If because of the climate change, the intensity of the flood increases and the frequency, forests act as a first line of defense. If there are no forests or degraded forests, the water rushes down and the crops in the valley are suffered. It's very simple. There is no big science behind it, actually. But also, this groundwater recharge is also diminished because the water goes as flood, and the ability of this landscape with trees has grossly compromised, so the water does not penetrate. So the springs, natural springs, they dry, the water table goes down, and people who were dependent on those springs, both for consumption and for irrigation, they just no longer can have. And that's part of the reason why irrigated land very often get converted into Barani land, because there is no supply of irrigation water. I want to come to the next point, and that's also I hope this is my contribution that I can make to this event today. If you go and ask, look at the records or ask the forest departments, everywhere, they will tell you the forests have actually increased. Previously, we had 3%, now we have 5%.
Which is both true and false.
What is happening, and which very few people recognize and mention, all expansion in the forest has happened due to planting of trees, mostly under the World Food Program, where they employed people for food and they planted trees. So you will see the hills which were barren for centuries, Malakand, Mansehra, Abtabad, Battagram.
You see these slopes greener. And the forest department tries to project it, you see, the forests have grown. What they do not admit and do not show, while we have been rushing new trees, saplings to these barren slopes, existing forests on the previous, which were hundreds of years old, they have disappeared very, very, very fast.
Species, I would bet, and if anybody here wants to challenge me, I would love to be challenged on that. Syren forests, for example. There used to be a tree called ash, Fraxinus excelsior, which is excellent furniture wood. Go and find one tree if you can find it. Cedars. Go in Syren Valley and find a cedar which is of harvestable volume. None. So all these slopes, the existing forests, they have been depleted, they have been ripped, and that is where the timber mafia has been very, very active and operating. And again, it is not happening. It would never have happened if the forest department had played its role
as a custodian and would not connive with the mafia itself. And it is not just the department, it's the whole polity. Whenever the election helps and the government is formed, forest ministry is very heavily contested in KP.
Officers, they pay to get their posting, and I don't know if the minister pays to get the forest ministry. So, it is a society-wide problem, and that's why this event is so useful. We may not be able to change the world, but we can begin to make the right noises, and not make noises because of the hearsay, because we have evidence.
But let me also give you another very clear, and I'm glad Khurshid Saab is here because he has authored many forest working plans as well. He is very knowledgeable. If anybody tells you that the forests have increased, ask him one question. Can you show me the working plan for one of your forests? Because forests should be managed under approved working plans. These are long-term plans of 10, 15 years. Each successive working plan, if you put, it will tell you the forest area has decreased, the number of trees has decreased, and the yield has decreased consistently from one decade to the next to the next.
So you don't need more evidence than that by their own account, the existing forest. And this is really a shame because I remember when I was working as chief environment and Aftab Sherpa was the chief minister, and I was asked to write a speech for him. And I put some words, and then he spoke those words in that speech. That if you falter
as an engineer and make a bridge, and the bridge falls, you have lost 100 million rupees. But if you have 100 million rupees, you can build it next day, next 6 months, next year. But if you have lost forest, you need another 100 years to build them. Even if you have the money, you cannot get them back. You will have to pay a heavy price as a society and as a community.
So why is it happening? I have touched on a lot of the causes, but I just want to list them for you very quickly. Overall, it is the politicization of the public services. We have moved from where, when I was recruited as a forest officer, it was 1978. I still have my first appointment letter. It would say, the governor of the Northwest Frontier Province is pleased to appoint
Mr. So-and-so in grade 17, 18 as DFO. It did not say that the chief minister is pleased to appoint, because I was meant to be employee of the state and not of the government. What has went wrong terribly, that both the polity and the employees have mentally made this switch that I'm employee of the government, which can be changing. Whereas there are two independent functions under the Constitution. So the polity, they have the prerogative to make policy. So let's say KP government, assembly can pass a law that all forests of KP should be liquidated in the next 2 years. It's their prerogative. They are elected, they can do that. It is my job then how to liquidate. They can't hold my hand. And implementing that decision is my responsibility. And I can tell them either I don't want to do it and I retire or resign, or I give them some advice how they can do it or why they should not do it. Or if I have to do it, then I have to do it as my job requires. So because of this politicization, and it's not limited to forests, it's the entire public service that has politicized. So people not only go and ask the minister who needs to be posted where, they pay.
When I went through this, I was asked to pay at one point if I wanted to retain one of the positions. I was DFO SWAT, and I went to the secretariat. You know, it's my personal experience. I had never met the minister, not once, because I had nothing to do with the minister. The private secretary to the minister saw me in the secretariat and said, "Oh, all DFOs come here and you don't come." I said, "I have nothing to do with the minister. I'm my conservator chief. If there's anything, I tell them." And then he said to me, "Oh, Mr. So-and-so is after your position and he's paying so much. And if you want your position, you have to do something." I said, "I don't want it. I can be moved." So people can say, deny a lot of things, but this is happening all the time. So this, how we would be correcting that. And then there is lack of transparency, lack of accountability. For example, in case of forest, there used to be, historically, they would put out an annual report. How much trees were planted, what is the status of the forest, how many trees been cut. This is no longer practiced. Nobody knows what is taken out, what is put in. And then also what has gone wrong, I would say, is that the education system, countrywide, education in general, but forestry education in particular, has gone far, 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 far down. So the professional Pakistan Forest Institute was one of the prime forestry institutions in South Asia. People from Bangladesh, people from Africa used to come and have their degrees from here. It has now been provincialized. No research work, anything is being done. All it is happening is new positions are created, people are promoted, and minister has occupied the forest guest house, and his family lives in the Director General house, and that's it. We have lost that space where quality education was provided. And forestry education was, at that time, people who really worked in the field, the conservators, the DFOs, they would be brought in for a period of time to teach so that they bring the practical experience. No longer. So provinces have created their own setups, parallel, and there the quality of education is also questionable. So if your workforce does not have the competence, how do you do this work? And I go back to that. Currently, both, like, let's say, no, it hurts me, but I'll say, in United States, we are 1/50th of the United States in area. Pakistan, Texas is as big as Pakistan is. Texas has one chief conservator. Entire National Forest Service of United States has one chief conservator. KP has 3 chief conservators. Why do you need 3 chief conservators? It's only to promote people and give them promotion. And because you did me a favor, you scratch my back and I scratch your back. How on the surface of Earth this is happening,
and why it's allowed to happen?
It's not only KP, even in Sindh, which have limited forests, they have, I think, 3 or 4 chief conservators of forests. And the irony is that in Sindh, their riparian forest is 8 lakh acres, inland forest, not the mangroves. By the statement of the Secretary of Forest before the Sindh High Court, out of 8 lakes, 7 lakh acres don't exist. Only 100,000 acre forest remain. And the number of chief conservator has increased to 5. How does that work? So we have made complete mess of the forest management system,
which is driven by not what the country needs, what the people need, but what benefits individuals. And this needs a major rethink.
I can go on the causes, but we have mentioned I mentioned the timber mafia and the elite capture, the deeply rooted corruption. And let me also share with you this, this corruption was all, because I'm a part of the system, I came from there. And I have no hesitation to reveal what the reality was.
Even when there was old contract system,
forest officers would still be paid, but they would be paid for doing their work right. So if, let's say, there is a forest, Khurshid Khan owns it, and he needs my authority to cut that, I will go and I'll mark those trees which needs to be cut. Even if I did my job absolutely honestly, he would still pay me 1 or 2 rupees a cubic foot.
It was just like in engineering, civil engineer, they get commission when they have the contracts.
But what has gone wrong is that people are not happy with that. So they started to say, you are allowed legally to cut 2 trees, but you can cut 4 if you pay me a bit more. And that is how the system has become absolutely rotten, if I can use that word. And I remember something from my professor, and
Khurshid also knows, we had a conservator, he was from Punjab, Asghar Qureshi. He was always kept at PFI because he was very honest. He would never be let in the field. He was very vocal as well. And he used to teach us forest management at one point. And I remember it was 1978 when I was doing my forestry training. He said, you know, I look at your faces. He was giving us a lecture. And I see you worried that your predecessor in the forest made money by cutting trees. And by the time you get into the field, there will be no forest. How you will make your money? And he said, but you don't have to worry. They made money by cutting the trees, and you will make money by planting the trees. And that is where the billion trees and all that comes in. People have made fortunes by planting trees and are not planting trees, depending on how you see it.
Finally, I would, the point to that currently the KP, it has a system of forest service which was built on 2 big pillars. One was the professional foresters who would be trained to be the leaders.
Just like it used to be a part of the CSS, civil service, before partition. And then the Superior Forest Service was separated because it needed scientists. So separate Public Service Commission would be conducted. And then there was a technical component where people in the field, technical capacity who would be implementing. The top layer, the professional leadership tab, has outlived. There is nobody in the KP service today who was trained like that. So people currently, if you see the chief conservators, they were the people who used to be foresters or range officers and who moved through because there were no new recruitments, the vision stopped. So these people, they have been, by their training, they have been trained to comply. They are not trained to question. And I want to give you an example. I met Secretary Forest about 3 years ago. He wanted me to do some assignment. We talked about it, and he was very proudly telling me that I went to the forest and people were planting trees. And I told them that instead of planting this one sapling, cheer pine, for example, you should also put a seed of robinia in it, and you should also put another seed in it. That way you can reduce the failover rate and something will survive. And I laughed. I laughed because he was basically promoting planting weeds beside the plant, which will compete with the tree for water and nutrients. So none of them will grow. But the chief conservator, if he was the chief conservator who was trained to lead, he would stand up to him and say, this cannot be done, this is wrong. But he wasn't denying. People started doing all what they were asking them to do. And that is where it hurts the most, because the chief conservator is meant to be the chief technical forest officer of the province. He is accountable for what goes wrong or right. He neither has the courage nor the trainings to stand up and give the right advice to the government. So you can accuse politicians of wrong decision, but you can also not blame them if the technical part of the system is not providing the right advice.
I will skip because I know, and there are a lot of causes we have talked about. I want to go to the way ahead. And I said, hopefully we will leave with some suggestions. My first suggestions would be that the system has gone so hayward that there be a complete independent review of the entire forest management and the service, the structure, the function, with an aim of developing an integrated and coherent forest policy and legal framework for sustainable management of the KP forests, premised on a 100-year vision. Because if you really want, you should think forest management by nature is long-term. So if you are thinking, you have to think not of now, you have to think of 100 years next, how the KP forest will function 100 years from now, where they will stand, and what I need to do today, because it takes you 100 years to grow the trees to that place, or to reforest that place. So one of my recommendations would be, if Afra Saab Khan at some point would become the Prime Minister or Chief Minister, and at that he would say, look, I really want a very thorough review of this whole thing. It has gone too far, too bad, and we cannot afford it. In parallel, a rethink of the organization of the forest department based on less who needs to be promoted and more on what it will take in terms of number and quality of human resources and requisite trainings and skills to implement the long-term vision competently and professionally. So one is you have a vision and you have a plan, and second is you have a resource, which is not only people, it's the people, the structure, the function that needs to go with it to implement that particular vision. Notwithstanding, because it can take time, what happens, notwithstanding what comes out of that process of review and reform, a few things which can be immediately done and they are no cost. One is make an irreversible policy decision that all the reserve forests, which are owned by state,
they will never be managed for commercial purpose. Stop, finish. People have no right there anyway. It is state forest. And if, given the climate dimension of it, if today these forests did not exist, the government would have to buy land and grow forests in order to protect them. And if it is their land, the wisest thing they can do is, please, no cutting, leave them at peace. But it's not only that they protect. Actually, there is a market which has emerged for carbon, for example, credits. Your forest standing are valuable more than the forest cut. I have the data, I can show it.
So that is, and biodiversity credit market is also emerging slowly. So there is this value. So this is out of the way. The second is the Guzara forest. All the Guzara forests, the second, my recommendation, all private and community forests, which are not owned by state, but which are managed by the forest department, but must also be duly regulated to enhance their climate benefits by requiring them to follow a long-term forest management plan approved and monitored by the forest department in a transparent and credible way. Two things in Sindh, because I work with Sindh Forest Department sometime as a consultant. Their working plans have not been revised in the last 3 decades. There is no forest working plan for any of their forests. In KP, its story is not very different, but it's different in this way that the working plans are cut and paste. No new research is done, no new measurements are done. People take the data from the previous work plan, cut and paste it, and then calculate some sort of yield, and that's how they're managed. There is no accountability. Who goes and sees whether they're doing it right or wrong? Who knows? So therefore, there has to be a system which is transparent and which is accountable. Guzara forests, which are owned by people, they are of course different. You cannot lump Guzara forest and reserve forest the same way. Because Guzara forests are owned by people, they should also be managed properly under approved management plans. And the priority should be for the people to meet their own needs of fuel and fodder and timber. If there is excess, they should be allowed to commercially harvest and sell, but again, under a long-term plan on a sustainable basis, so the forests keep growing. But people often don't recognize, and there is a resentment, even not in the owners, but timber mafia, they would present, say, oh, this is my property, what you have to do it, it's my job whether I cut the tree, I don't want the tree or I want the tree. But it's not like that. Climate, the larger environment function is a public service and a public function. So even in countries like United States, if you are a private owner, you still are required to have a management plan. And that management plan has to be approved by
discussion. Acha ji. So although I would like Hamid Afridi Saab or Arshad Samad, who is also जो हमारे IUCN के हैं, अपने थोड़े words कह दें, but if you want to speak, well and good, वरना interactive में आप बात कर लेते हैं. हमीद साहब ताऊ खबर कोल वाले. जी जी.
I just want to share. I shared some information this morning. Dr. Ahsan will bear me out. एक बहुत बड़ा प्रोग्राम है हमारा गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पाकिस्तान का बिलियन ट्री सुनामी के नाम से. तो हमने उनसे पूछा आज सुबह कि जी एक सेमिनार हो रहा है SDPI में, would you like to come? Are you invited? तो KP में फॉरेस्ट का क्या सूरत हाल है? कहते जी बढ़ गया है. कितना बढ़ गया है जी? 20 से 22% हो गया है. तो हमने कहा ये कवर्ड एरिया है या लैंड है? कहते जी लैंड है. So I think one of the things that we need to ask, as Rafiq Saab rightly pointed out, it may be 22%, Allah kare ke 25% se bhi badh jaye, lekin we need to ask for evidence, we need to ask for satellite imageries. Aaj to ab to technology ka daur hai, isme to aap jhoot nahi bol sakte, and the picture doesn't lie. So if we are
realistic about it and we want to improve the situation, we definitely need to ask these questions. and I'd request के minutes में और recommendations में department को ये डाले. We have the experts here already who know how these things should be managed. Lekin this is all, as you rightly pointed out, interconnected. Nothing is, well, we come from the soil and we go into the soil. So everything has a bearing, and forests जो है ये is a more, as Rafiq Saab said, better off, we are better off standing, whether that's in the urban areas or in the mountainous areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Hamid Saab. As you said, उन्होंने बात की साहब ने कि existential threat है, it's looming and it's big and it's coming, और population explosion जिस तरह जा रही है. I would request words about climate change और forest की sustainability, क्योंकि उसी तरफ हम बात करना चाह रहे हैं कि क्या impacts हैं उसके. थोड़ा सा बात कर लें, and then we'll open it for the.
Thank you very much to STPI and Surface Conservation Network for providing this opportunity to gather here and discuss a very critical and important issue which relates directly to our livelihoods and security. Basically, Rafiq Saab have already touched upon so many things. There is not much room to say additional things, but one thing in terms of what Hamid was saying is the interrelationship and connection between deforestation, climate change. लेकिन मैं इसको थोड़ा सा will look at it to another dimension, the security. What is the nexus between
deforestation to climate change and then security? Security in terms of not only food security or water security, but in terms of national security. So we all know because of the changing weather patterns, so rain patterns, it has changed, and due to that, our crops or agriculture sector has been affected tremendously, which is of course resulting in lower yield of the crops, and because of the floods, जैसे रफीक साहब बता रहे थे, some of the full fields have been washed away. So food security is a bigger issue for Pakistan, particularly in the context of population. We are sitting on a time bomb, to be honest with you, because the resources we have and जो population जिस रफ्तार से exponentially बढ़ रही है, so soon the time will come when we will start fighting with each other on food, on water, on other issues. So it has a very closely linked, because deforestation से क्या होता है कि आपकी जो greenhouse gas emissions हैं वो increase होती हैं. जब वो increase होती है तो of course climate change is related to that. तो climate change से फिर ये जो food security के अलावा water insecurity भी आ जाती है, क्योंकि बाज़ जगहों पे आप जहाँ पे रफीक साहब बता रहे थे कि पहले वहाँ पे फॉरेस्ट होते थे या वो बैरन लैंड में चेंज हो रहे हैं, इसी तरह लैंड डिग्रेडेशन हो रही है बिकॉज ऑफ द लेस एंड लेस. बाज़ जगहों पे फ्लड्स आ रहे हैं और बाज़ जगहों पे बिल्कुल पानी नहीं है, जैसे हमारे सिंध एरिया में है या इवन केपी में जो हमारे सदर्न एरियाज हैं. तो वो चीज़ वी शुड कीप इन माइंड के हाउ दीज आर लिंक्ड टू security. And the third point is economic security, क्योंकि जब climate change की वजह से जो changes आ रही हैं तो उसका direct impact on the economy होता है. जैसे आप take the example of last year floods, it resulted in almost जो calculation UNA और organization की है, it resulted into almost $30 billion losses in economic term. So ये चीजें जब होती है तो पाकिस्तान already we are struggling with our economy, हम बैंकों से कर्जे मांग रहे हैं, तो it push us back. इस किस्म के जो natural events आते हैं because of climate change, deforestation, it put us back into 10 to 20 years. Our development reverse हो जाती है. तो we are then in a वो क्या कहते हैं, एक किस्म का vicious circle में. जनाब फ्लड्स आ गए, कर्जे मांग लिए, फिर जनाब उसको थोड़ा बहुत काम किए, फिर 2 साल बाद 5 साल बाद फिर फ्लड्स या वो कुछ नेचुरल डिजास्टर हो गए. तो इकोनॉमिक سیکیورٹی کے حوالے سے اس کے اوپر اس کے کافی انٹریکشن اور ریلیشن شپ ہے. جو ادر پوائنٹ ہے وہ لائیولیہڈ انسیکیورٹی, کیونکہ بیکاز آف دیز فلڈز اور ڈراؤٹس اور چینجنگ ویدر پیٹرنس, لوگوں کے لائیولیہڈ ہیز بین افیکٹڈ ٹریمینڈسلی. جیسے مثال آلریڈی دی گئی ہے کہ جو ماؤنٹین ایریا میں لوگ رہتے تھے, بیکاز آف دی چینجز ان دی ڈیموگریٹک فیکٹرز اینڈ ادر تھنگس, پیپل آر موونگ اوے. سو آپ کا جو لائیولیہڈ ہے وہ افیکٹ اس سے ہو رہا ہے. اور جب فلڈ آتے ہیں تو ایک فارمر ہے, اس کے اگر 1 ایکڑ پہ اس نے وہ کراپس وہ کیے ہوئے ہیں اور وہ جناب واشڈ آؤٹ ہو جاتے ہیں فلڈ سے, تو he has nothing to do, تو اس کا پورا لائیولیہڈ افیکٹ ہے پورے سال کے لیے. سو وہ جو امپورٹنٹ ریلیشن شپ ہے وہ وی نیڈ ٹو انڈرسٹینڈ کہ جو لائیولیہڈ کا ہے انسیکیورٹی کا وہ بڑا ضروری ہے. جو سوشل سیکیورٹی کے اوپر بھی بات ہو گئی کہ سوشل ہاؤ اٹ ریلیٹس ٹو دا سوشل انسیکیورٹی. جیسے آپ کے جو فلڈس یا اور نیچرل ڈیزاسٹر ہوتے تو پیپل آر ڈسپلیس, ٹھیک ہے. جب پیپل آر ڈسپلیس تو ان کی جو ہیلتھ فیسلٹیز ہے, دے فار ایگزامپل آپ ایک جگہ پہ رہ رہے تو وین یو موو آؤٹ یو ڈونٹ ہیو دیٹ سیکیورٹی. یا آپ کے ایجوکیشن بچے پڑھ رہے تھے کہاں پہ, وہ ڈسپلیس ہو گئے تو نہیں کہ وہ کیمپ میں آپ جاتے ہیں تو وہ فیسلٹیز آپ کو. اس کے علاوہ میڈیکل ٹریٹمنٹ, وہ تو سوشل انسیکیورٹی ان ٹرم آف مینی ادر فیکٹر انکلوڈنگ لائیولیہڈ, تو وہ ایک چیز وی ہیو ٹو انڈرسٹینڈ. اور جو اس سے آف کورس ریلیٹڈ ٹو ہیومن سیکیورٹی وہ آ جاتا ہے, لیکن ایک جو چیز ہے وہ نیشنل سیکیورٹی. نیشنل سیکیورٹی ان ٹرم آف بوتھ, ہم جب بات کرتے ہیں سیکیورٹی کی, ایک تو جو فوڈ سیکیورٹی اور واٹر سیکیورٹی کی بات آ گئی, لائیولیہڈ, لیکن جو نیشنل سیکیورٹی ہے اس کا بھی اس سے اٹ ہیز ڈائریکٹ ریلیشن شپ. وہ کیسے, کیونکہ the studies have been done کہ when in extreme weather, جب ٹیمپریچر بہت ہائی ہو جاتا ہے, پاکستان میں تو 50 سے بھی بعض دفعہ بڑھ جاتا ہے, یا it goes مائنس میں چلا جاتا ہے, تو آپ کے بہت سے جو ڈیفینس کے سسٹمز ہیں they don't function properly. This is ریئلٹی فیکٹ ہے, اس پہ کافی ریسرچ ہوئی ہے. تو آپ کی جو نیشنل سیکیورٹی وہ بھی ان کوشچن آ جاتی ہے کہ بھئی ہاؤ کم, ایک ہم تو اس کو بڑا لائٹ لے لیتے کہ جی ڈیفورسٹیشن اور کیا ہو رہا ہے یار, کچھ بھی نہیں, معمولی سی چیز ہے اور درخت اگا لیں گے, لیکن اس کے جو ریپل ایفیکٹ ہے, اس کے جو امپیکٹ ہے وہ دے آر فار فار بیانڈ اوور تھنکنگ کہ کیا وہ ہو سکتے ہیں. تو وہ بس چیزیں ہیں. I would like to get the nexus between deforestation, climate change and security. So
thank you, Ji.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very good review of its a multi stakeholder or multiple इसके impacts हैं, multiplier effects हैं. आप थोड़ी सी बात कर लेंगे, वो बार बार कह रहे हैं टाइम है, अपना इंट्रोडक्शन सर कर लें और फिर.
मेरा नाम एहसान है.
जी जी.
I belong to Gilgit.
जी जी.
Worked with IUCN for quite a number of years under the patronage of Rafiq साहब. यहाँ जो चीज हम डिस्कस कर रहे हैं ना, वो ज्यादातर इफेक्ट्स कॉजेस की तरफ हम कम जा रहे हैं. ठीक है, कॉजेस के एक साइड रफीक साहब ने टच किया, वो फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट या वेस्टेड इंटरेस्ट का जो माफिया है उस तरफ. जो कम्युनिटी एस्पेक्ट है, हमने गिलगित बल्तिस्तान में ट्राई किया ट्रॉफी हंटिंग. अगर वही हम यहाँ अप्लाई करें, ट्रॉफी हंटिंग इज इन लिमिटेड पार्ट ऑफ गिलगित बल्तिस्तान, दैट कैन बी रेप्लिकेटेड एल्सवेयर. दूसरा ये है कि कम्युनिटी लाइवलीहुड को पहले प्रायोरिटाइज करें. आप उन लोगों की लाइवलीहुड को एड्रेस करें कि उन्होंने सर्दी में कुछ तो जलाना है, उनको हीट चाहिए. तो अगर आप उनको हीट नहीं देंगे तो वो क्या जलाएगा? या माइग्रेट करेगा हॉटर एरियाज की तरफ, या उसने जंगल को काटना है. तीसरा जो इस वक्त है कि हम उन लोगों को जो ट्रॉफी हंटिंग है या इसके जो बेनिफिट्स हैं फॉरेस्ट के, वो उनके साथ हम कम्युनिकेट करें. ये कम्युनिकेशन इस वक्त नहीं हो रहा है कि बस वो हम फॉरेस्ट और ऑक्सीजन और कार्बन क्रेडिट की हम बातें कर रहे हैं, लेकिन उसमें भी एक टाइम स्पैन है, 5 साल 7 साल 10 साल. जब तक उनकी जेब में इससे कुछ जाएगा नहीं, कम्युनिटीज आपके साथ कोऑपरेट नहीं करेंगे.
Very well said. Please, interact. Can you open it to the interactive session? Please. Please. अपना इंट्रोडक्शन करने से ग्रैब करती है।
इस वजह से भी लोग जो है ना अनसिक्योर महसूस करती है और वो अपनी जमीनों को फिर या तो बेचती है या उस पे जो है ना घर आबाद करती है। घर आबाद हो जाए तो वो हुकूमत किसी भी तौर से नहीं गिराती। तो इस सिलसिले में ये भी ठीक है, गवर्नमेंट जमीन अल्लाह ताला की है और हुकूमत को यह हक हासिल है। ये भी कुरान से एक डराया हुआ है वर्जन है कि यूसुफ अलैहिस्सलाम को अल्लाह ने कहा यतबव्वअ मिनल अर्द है कैफ यशा हैसु यशा, वो जिस जमीन को चाहता था वो उधर आबाद कर लेता था। वो तो आबाद करने की बात है ना, हुकूमत को ये हक नहीं पहुंचती है कि वो जबरदस्ती किसी से उसकी कीमती जमीन जो उसके आबा व अजदाद की है वो पकड़ ले जबरदस्ती कि मैं इधर ग्रेड बना रहा हूँ, मैं खुद एक इंजीनियर या मैं इधर कोई और इदारा बना रहा हूँ। तो इस वजह से भी हमारे लोग अनसिक्योर महसूस करती है। तो इसलिए जो है ना फॉरेस्ट जल्द अज जल्द ख़त्म हो रहे हैं, कोई उसके लिए वो नहीं है। वो लोग अपनी ज़मीनें जो बयाबान ज़मीनें हैं ना सहरा वगैरह में जिसको मेराजात हम कहते हैं, वो लोग फिर बेच देते हैं। उसका कोई कानून नहीं है, वो मिल्कियती ज़मीन नहीं होती है, शामिलाती ज़मीन होती है। तो लोग उसको जो है ना पौने पौने दाम में बेच देती है। तो इसके लिए मैं ये कहता हूँ कि ये तो हुकूमत खुद अपने हमारे ये कानून खत्म होना चाहिए। काला कानून है और जुल्म का कानून है।
थैंक यू वेरी मच। खुर्शीद साहब, आप कहाँ के रहने वाले?
थैंक यू। बहुत अच्छा हुआ जी, ये रफीक खान को अरसे बाद सुना मरे, माशाल्लाह फॉरेस्ट्री के गुरु हैं। और आई ऑलवेज फेल्ट प्राउड ऑफ हिम एंड कोशिश की कि उनके करीब रहे, पड़ोसी भी रहे हैं, पर टुडे आफ्टर लॉन्ग आई एम थैंकफुल टू यू। अच्छा, रफीक खान ने मसले तो बड़े डिस्क्राइब किए और जैसे एहसान ने कहा एग्री विद हिम, सोल्यूशन कोई ऐसे अच्छा नहीं नजर आया, वो मजा नहीं आया। तो सोल्यूशन थोड़ा सा आपने हिंट किया जो कि मौजूद है और जो हो रहा है पिछले 60 से 70s तक, लेकिन उसकी तरफ हम ध्यान नहीं करें। वो है ये जो आपने कहा जी प्राइवेट लैंड पे इन्वेस्टमेंट। सो जितने हमारे कॉमन प्रॉपर्टी रिसोर्सेज हैं ना, इस पे मेरी पीएचडी का हमारे मकाले यही था, ट्रेजेडी ऑफ कॉमन। ये रिजर्व फॉरेस्ट, गुजारा फॉरेस्ट, पब्लिक प्रॉपर्टी जो भी है, ये ऑफिस में मैंने देखा कि बॉयल पॉइंट भी नहीं छोड़ते हम, ठीक है ना। तो ये बगैर लॉक और कीज के, बगैर बाउंड्री के और वॉल के, ये जंगल कौन छोड़ेगा। तो ए ट्रेजेडी ऑफ कॉमन इज इन प्ले फॉर वेरी लॉन्ग टाइम। उस ट्रेजेडी में गवर्नमेंट सबसे पहले शामिल है, जो रफीक खान ने हैंड किया, क्योंकि पैसे है उसमें। अच्छा, उसके साथ साथ जो क्लियर टाइटल है ना प्रॉपर्टी का, ये मेरी मकाले भी था और ये इनफैक्ट इट इज प्लेइंग इन द फील्ड। वो ये है कि जहाँ टाइटल है ना, तो ये मेरे सर की तरह यहाँ जंगल कटे हुए हैं जो गवर्नमेंट के फॉरेस्ट के ऊपर, लोग जाके ऊपर से काट लेते हैं कि वो गवर्नमेंट की प्रॉपर्टी है, लेकिन नीचे जो इन्होंने कहा प्राइवेट फॉरेस्ट आर इमर्जिंग, जाके आप वहां से एक टेनी तो काट ले, नॉट पॉसिबल बिकॉज इट इज ओनरशिप। ओनरशिप प्ले वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रोल, ठीक है ना। जितने इन्होंने कहा जी प्राइवेट लैंड पे ना, वाटरशेड प्लांटेशन के तहत या जो भी, इफ टाइटल इज क्लियर तो लोग झगड़ा करते हैं, मार कुटाई करते हैं, फसाद करते हैं, रख काटने को नहीं देंगे। एंड दिस इज फैक्ट, रफीक खान वुड एग्री विद मी। अच्छा, अब आते हैं हम ये कैसे करेंगे। हमारे पास मिसाल मौजूद है, इन्होंने ट्रॉफी हंटिंग के जिक्र किया, उसमें थोड़ी मेरी भी इन्वॉल्वमेंट थी एक प्रोजेक्ट में, इसकी जो माउंटेन एरिया कंजर्वेंसी प्रोजेक्ट, वो कम्युनिटी की और है, उन्होंने कामयाब किया। बट ये जो है ना हमारा वाटरशेड का प्राइवेट लैंड जो है ना, ये हमारे पास वो मिसाल है कि प्रॉपर्टी कम्युनिटी की अपनी है, नॉट कॉमन लैंड बट देयर इंडिविजुअल टाइटल। अच्छा, इसको अब हम कैसे मेन स्ट्रीम करेंगे, पॉलिसी डायलॉग चाहिए। ये फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट कभी नहीं मानता, मैं भी फॉरेस्टर हूँ, रफीक खान भी फॉरेस्टर हैं, वो नहीं मानेंगे। और जैसे अफरसियाब,
पैसे उसमें शामिल,
हाँ अफरसियाब साहब ने बताया कि हमें इन्होंने ऑफर किया, एंड आई विल बी द फर्स्ट टू फॉलो हिम, कि हमें मिलना चाहिए इन पार्टियों से। ये कल हुकूमत में आएंगे, उन्हें कहना है कि भाई आप इसमें चेंजेस करें, कानून को चेंज करें। एक काला कानून है जनाब, इसके बावजूद कि ये कोनीफरस फॉरेस्ट जो है ना बैन है, लोग फिर भी अपनी प्रॉपर्टी पे लगा रहे हैं और टेनियां काट रहे हैं अपनी जरूरत पूरी करने के लिए। वो दरख्त को नहीं काटते, दरख्त को काटने के लिए डिपार्टमेंट से इजाजत लेनी पड़ती है, یہ ایک علیحدہ ڈائناما ہے. تو ہمیں گریجولی یا کوئکلی اسپونٹینیسلی یا اسپیڈ کے ساتھ ہمیں اس کو چینج کرنا چاہیے. فارسٹ لا کو پالیسی بنانی چاہیے کہ کیسے ان لوگوں کی اپنی ملکیت یہ سمجھیں ان سارے جنگلات کو, جو کہ چاہے گورنمنٹ کے ہیں یا کہ پرائیویٹ ہیں, تب بھی انشور ہو سکے گا. اور کاربن کریڈٹ بھی ایک اس طرف اشارہ ہے, لیکن لوگوں کو جب تک اپنا فائدہ نظر نہیں آئے گا نا, وہ آپ سے کوآپریٹ نہیں کریں گے. تھینک یو.
He would like to respond to your question.
Very quickly, you have made an excellent point, and actually it was last point on my presentation as well, but I wanted to, of course, that there be discussion there. It is absolute must. We as human beings always act in self-interest. If you want to change my behavior, you have to show me why it is beneficial to me. Unless I can demonstrate that, you cannot expect people. Khuda ke waaste koi bhi kuch nahi karta. It is pure self-interest and money. And that is the point, that dunya jis taraf ja rahi hai, naye markets develop ho rahe hain. اور یہ اب ہوا کی بات نہیں ہے. سندھ میں آلریڈی مینگروو فارسٹ کو کاربن کھڑے کھڑے وہ کاربن کو بیچ رہے ہیں انٹرنیشنل مارکیٹ میں. ملین آف ڈالرز سندھ گورنمنٹ لے رہی ہے. اور یہ یہاں بھی ممکن ہے, خاص کر پرائیویٹ لینڈ پہ جہاں پہ انفورسمنٹ پراپرٹی رائٹس کی ہو. دیر از اے ہیوج اپرچونٹی پاکستان میں, کے پی میں. لیکن اس کے لیے جیسے انہوں نے کہا 2 چیزیں چاہیے. ایک انیبلنگ پالیسی فریم ورک ہو, اور دوسرا یہ کہ لوگوں تک یہ نالج کیسے پہنچے. ہماری جو اگین فارسٹ سروسز ہیں پنجاب میں یا جہاں بھی, ان کی سوچ ابھی تک نہیں بدلی. ان کی سوچ ابھی تک درخت لگانے اور کاٹنے پہ ہے. یہ جو نئے مارکیٹ ڈیولپ ہو رہے ہیں اس کے متعلق کوئی آگاہی نہیں ہے, پڑھے لکھے لوگوں میں بھی نہیں ہے, پروفیشنلز میں بھی نہیں ہے. تو اس کو چینج کرنا پڑے گا کہ لوگوں کے پاس جائیں کہ بھئی فرض کریں آپ کی فارسٹ ہے, ایون مردان میں میرا دا, میرا میں بہت سارے درخت آپ 1000 ایکڑ پہ لگا سکتے ہیں. تو آپ مجھ سے پوچھیں کہ بھئی مجھے فائدہ کیا. میں آپ کو یہ بتاؤں کہ بھئی اس کا کاربن ہے کیا, اس کے لیے آپ کو کیا کرنا پڑے گا. کاربن پروجیکٹ بنانا پڑے گا, اس کی ٹیکنیکل اسسمنٹ کرانی پڑے گی, ویریفیکیشن کرانی پڑے گی, کون اس کو بیچے گا, کہاں پہ بیچے گا, کہ اس آدمی کو سمجھ پڑے. لیکن یہ نالج ہے یا محدود ہے, لیکن یہ نالج ٹرانسفر نہیں ہو پا رہا, ایک بیریئر ہے. اور اس میں ہماری جو صلاحیتیں ہیں وہ یا عدم صلاحیتیں ہیں وہ اس میں آ رہی ہیں.
بہت زبردست, تھینک یو سو مچ. یہ کیونکہ آپ کو پتہ ہے شری رحمان نے 200 ملین جو ہے مینگروو فارسٹ کے لیے کاربن کریڈٹ سندھ کے لیے لیے ہے, اور میں نے ان کو اس کی وہ بھی دی کہ داد بھی دیا کہ یو وینٹ اینڈ یو سیکیورڈ اٹ. اینڈ کے پی میں تو سب سے ڈینس ہیں, وہاں پہ افراد صاحب کی بات کہ ہم پالیسی میکرز کو کہیں, ہماری بیوروکریسی جو ڈیڈ ہے ان کو کنونس کریں تھرو ابھی فیوچر جو پالیسی میکرز کہ بھئی اس چیز کو آپ کیش کریں. کے پی از دا موسٹ فارسٹ ڈینس, تو اس پہ تو بڑا امپورٹنٹ کام فار دا فیوچر ہونا چاہیے. دے ڈوئنگ ہیوج کر رہے ہیں. ہاں احسان صاحب جی.
اس کوشچن کو جہاں تک کلب ان مارکیٹ کا ہے, اور آپ کے لیے پڑھے لکھے لوگوں کے لیے 2 چیزیں ضروری ہیں اگر آپ نے کاربن مارکیٹ میں سے فائدہ لینا ہے. وہ آپ کے کاربن کو خریدیں گے کیوں اور پیسے کیوں. ایک کہ ٹینیور سیکیور ہو, کہ یہ پتا ہو کہ یہ زمین کس کی ہے اور اس کا بینیفٹ کس کو جائے گا. جب تک ہم یہ نہیں ڈیمانسٹریٹ کرتے وہ نہیں خریدیں گے. دوسرا انکریمنٹلٹی ہے, ہم نے یہ ہر سال ڈیمانسٹریٹ کرنا ہوتا ہے کہ بھئی یہ درخت بڑھ گئے ہیں, کاربن پیدا ہو گیا ہے, زیادہ ہو گیا ہے, اور اس کا ایک بیس لائن ہے, اور اس کے حساب سے اتنا نیا کاربن درختوں کے اوپر چڑھ گیا ہے, یہ ہم آپ کو بیچ رہے ہیں. اگلے سال اور چڑھے گا, ہم اور بیچیں گے. ہمارے ہاں چونکہ ڈیفارسٹیشن پہ کنٹرول نہیں ہے, ہم نیٹ انکریمنٹ ڈیمانسٹریٹ نہیں کر سکتے. ہم نے 10 درخت لگائے, اس پہ کاربن اکرو ہوا, لیکن پڑوس میں ہم نے 3 درخت کاٹ لیے, तो नेट इंक्रीमेंट नेगेटिव हो गया, आप कुछ भी नहीं बेच सकते। सिक्योरिटी और इंक्रीमेंटलिटी ये दो क्रिटिकल एलिमेंट्स हैं अगर आप कार्बन मार्केट में पार्टिसिपेट। मुश्किल नहीं है, लेकिन ये सिक्योरिटी टेनेवर की जरूरी है इसके लिए।
अच्छा, और क्वेश्चन एनीवन एल्स? प्लीज अपने को इंट्रोड्यूस कर दीजिए।
So my name is Ali Jabir. I'm media coordinator at STPI. Before that, I served in APP as environment journalist. I have visited the plantation sites of 10 billion tree tsunami and all that. From your presentation, sir, you said there is, sorry, lack of accountability and evidence. When we went to PFI, they presented us the Sparko satellite images that were indicating increase in the forest cover. They said this is the most valid proof that our plantation have helped us in increasing the forest cover. And on ground, they took us to those forests that were community owned, the Guzara forest that you mentioned, then private lands that were created or turned into forests like the Gadi Chandan forest, Balder, and and a place in Malakand, I forgot its name. Then in KP and Hazara as well, in Balder, we were there. So they gave us an impression that the community was owning those forests, and this green cover is actually rising. But the images that you showed in the video, that is giving another side of that. My second question is linked to it, that our mainstay of our every research that we claim that our in conservation efforts are bearing fruits, or we have carbon stocks, or we can work on that, that is KP. If this is the situation in KP, the Ministry of Climate Change is now preparing a draft on carbon market credits. Will that serve the purpose, or will that be valid or vetted by the international organizations if this situation is there?
I will answer
That is the
that.
question, sir.
Can I answer this? Yes, ever since the interim government came into power, this began massive deforestation. It's not that we don't want the Ministry of Climate Change, neither are we it's an interest not to claim carbon credits. Actually, we went to see Shari Rahman and we pleaded with her, showed her, ये तो उसका 1/4 भी नहीं है. अगर आप वहाँ आए और वहाँ communities, अभी मैंने बहुतों को बुलाया था from Khyber, Tira, they said अगर SDPI हमें वो करे तो we will come here and present our cases. These are like वहाँ के जो है, जो residents हैं वहाँ के तीरा के और जो area के हैं, they are showing कि अभी जो government interim, I'm not talking about the PTI government जो उन्होंने ये किया था, उसमें questions होंगे. It was not maybe 100%, but at least 80% था. But ever since they went out of power and the new government interim came in, it is, I can't explain to you. It's notorious, it's criminal, it's unforgivable, it's shocking. I don't have words. क्योंकि आपका जो governor है, उनका भी काफी, I'm sorry, I wouldn't be saying him, हमने कहा किसी का नाम नहीं बताएंगे, अफरा साहब will bear me out, कि हमारी governance बर्बाद हो गई है interim government में. And that is what we are worried, कि KP के सिर्फ sustainability और जो उन्होंने थोड़ा बहुत वो बिल्डअप किया था अपना इमेज, जैसे उन्होंने कहा थोड़ा उन्होंने गेन किया था, उसको तो अभी वो 100 years 200 years फॉरेस्ट को तबाह हो रहे हैं. एंड इट्स जस्ट नॉट वन. ये जो कुछ तस्वीरें बताएं, हर रोज एक नया डिजास्टर आ रहा है. कभी हमारे सेंट्रल जेल में, परसों आपके इस्लामिया कॉलेज के पूरे पुराने ट्रीज कट रहे हैं, कभी आपके जो है इवन इन द सिटी, जो कि वापडा के ऑफिस में उस दिन गया, वहाँ ह्यूज जो है शीशम के दरख्त पड़े हुए थे. So it's all around you. It's just like a massive, I should not use that word, जो गाजा का जो मैसेकर हो रहा है हमारा वहाँ हो रहा है. That's why we came to this forum. That's why we pleaded with Sherry, for God's sake, let's bring some sanity in the government. ये जो अभी बैठे हैं आपके जो secretary, I didn't want to say this, उनके पास 3 NAB के cases हैं. He has been removed, उनको हटाया गया था पीटे, वो अभी आए through the governor, JI, वो पूरा एक nexus बन गया है. उनका जो भाई जिसको chief minister बनाया है, तो we अल्लाह ही बचाए कि अब क्या होने वाला है. So we are living in a disaster zone. It's not about credit, it's about survival. And I wish we can regain carbon levels and we reverse these trends. That's why we came to plead our case, to make a change. We didn't come here to destroy Pakistan image or destroy. We want, हम वहाँ के किसी ग्रुप है, हर एक इलाके से हमारे पास हैं. I will share with you the report, jo detailed. I will share with you iske alawa jo hai, and I'll give you connections to all those. You can please visit and do something. But we're here to plead the case for improvement and not for giving a bad image. Thank you. Is there anything else, Ji? Ji, acha ji. Thank you very much for everyone. Adita, concluding the paravem. Obviously, I have to invite him. Thank you very much, Kaka Khail Saab, for giving this opportunity, and all the guest speakers, each and every one. मैं आपके नाम दोबारा वक्त नहीं ज़ाया करना चाहता, but it has been a pleasure, a great, educated, हमारे लिए informative था, and I hope we can come out of this with some positive conclusions. And who else could have done it other than Shafqat Kaka Khail Saab with such a high standing in the diplomatic circles? Hamesha inhone he's answered our call. Or I thank you once again, and I hope that you will be able to take it forward. Your vote of thanks, sir. Thank you.
Dear friends, Well, I come from a family of teachers and preachers, so I will be able to. You will hear me wherever you are. It's a very, very pleasant duty for me to express my gratitude to several people who have made this evening what it has been for all of us. And first of all, Adil Zarif deserves our heartfelt gratitude for coming all the way from Peshawar for this and suggesting that we do a discussion on the endangered, the beleaguered forest resources of Pukhtunkhwa. And I'm so glad that this meeting has taken place. Most of SDPI's work has, for a number of reasons, basically focused on the federal government, because we don't have the resources to reach out to the provinces, to go to the provinces and the so-called autonomous regions. So it is wonderful when someone like Adil Zarif takes the initiative and enables us to do something on behalf of the provinces of Pakistan. Pakistan is a federation, and whatever happens in life in the federation will happen in the provinces. It will not happen in Islamabad. So I say this with reference to climate change, that all the impacts of climate change will be felt in the provinces, and it is in the provinces that we must seek remedies, we must seek solutions, and we must unite the communities on behalf of their own well-being. The subject of forest resources is extremely important for a number of reasons, and the importance of this resource has become much more because of the nexus between climate change and forests. Whenever I speak on climate change, I identify deforestation as the second most important driver of climate change. The first one, of course, is the greenhouse gases, the concentration since the Industrial Revolution. But climate change is much more. If you look at the impacts of climate change, from sea level rise to heat waves and forest storms and all, forests will come into the picture. About forests, I was reading an article which said Pakistan is essentially a forest deficient country, and it's because of our soil, our precipitation level is one of the lowest. The highest is, I think, 250 mm. And I remember I was once invited to Iran to see their how they take care of their water resources and the wetlands, because the Global Convention on Wetlands takes its name from Iran, from Ramsar. And I was amazed to see the way the Iranians take care of their lakes. They take better care of their lakes than their own homes. I mean, it's impossible for me to describe in words. And I asked them, I said, it is truly amazing. And how did you develop the culture to look after these wetlands and the water resources, the lakes? And they said, you know, we take care of our lakes because we have so few of them. We have so little water that we must preserve every drop. And that is what we should be doing in Pakistan. If we are forest deficient, it is all the more reason that we hold on to the trees we have, both the trees, the palm trees, and the forest resources. And I think so. I must also thank the star of this afternoon, and that is Mohammad Rafiq, whom I have known for a long, long time. I had the honor of visiting him in Karachi. We went on a trip in a boat to see the mangroves, and also we had common friends. And I was following, like a spy, I was following his news. And I was always happy that whosoever I spoke to, spoke very highly of his professionalism, his commitment, his dedication, and above all, his knowledge, of which we have seen a sample. And I would urge Rafiq to publish his findings based on decades of observation and dealing with the forest issue. I would also like to thank Afrasiab Khatak as someone who I have always respected for his commitment to Pukhtunkhwa, to the welfare of Pukhtunkhwa, and to the promotion of human rights and democracy in Pukhtunkhwa. This is a grim battle, but he has waged this battle without regard to the costs involved to him in personal comfort, in personal status, and in personal situation. And we hope that his efforts and the efforts of his colleagues will bear fruit. They are faced with tremendous challenge. For some odd reason, somehow, all the mafias are, whether it's the forest mafia or the political mafia or the human rights mafia, they tend to be united against Pukhtunkhwa. So I think it's people like Afrasiab deserve our gratitude and deserve our support. So once again, thanks. I'm glad Khurshid has come. It's his birthday today, but he sacrificed his birthday, left his family, and came to be with us this afternoon. So we wish him many, many years of remarkable work. He helped us set up a little farm outside Islamabad, and I understand he has his own farm. Also, his father was a model farmer, and made tremendous strides in farming techniques and you know. So once again, I wish to thank everybody who's assembled here, and I hope we will see more of you in future. I hope those of you who are able to come. We have the Sustainable Development Conference coming up from 21st to 23rd. And I hope whenever you have time, the program will be extremely exciting. And I hope that we will see you at the conference and after that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please serve here.
Thank you so much.
It's wonderful, Rafi. It's wonderful.
I'm delighted.
So if
example, in case of forest, there used to be, historically, they would put out an annual report. How much trees were planted, what is the status of the forest, how many trees been cut. This is no longer practiced. Nobody knows what is taken out, what is put in. And then also what has gone wrong, I would say, is that the education system, countrywide, education in general, but forestry education in particular, has gone far, 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 far down. So the professional, Pakistan Forest Institute was one of the prime